Good evening. For those you haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Mike Moe. I'm co-founder at GSV. And on behalf of my colleagues at GSV and our partners at Arizona State University, I want to welcome you to the 7th Annual Education Innovation Summit. Today has already been an incredible day. I'm super excited about the next 2 days. Before I get going, I want to make a personal comment. If I get my slides going. So this morning, we learned that one of the truly great people of all time, Bill Campbell, passed away. Bill was a very close personal friend of mine. He was a close friend of GSV. He was on our board. Bill was passionate about entrepreneurs. He was passionate about technology. He was passionate about people. He was passionate about education. He had one of the most remarkable careers that you could ever imagine. He started as a head football coach at Columbia University and ended up being one of the most respected business leaders in the world. He was the chairman of Intuit. He was on the board of Apple. He was the chairman of the board of trustees at Columbia University. The National Football Foundation named their annual award for the top player, scholar, and leader, the Bill Campbell Trophy. They call him the coach of Silicon Valley because he was the personal coach to basically anybody who mattered in Silicon Valley. He was Steve Jobs' personal coach. He's Larry Page's personal coach. He's Jeff Bezos' personal coach. A number of entrepreneurs here, CEO of Curious, Justin Kitch, Mike McHugh from Flipboard, Dan Rosenzweig from Chegg, all Bill personally mentored. And he also was incredibly generous with his time for events that we put on because he wanted to share his knowledge and insights with the entrepreneurial community. He was at our summit a couple years ago. And one of the things that I'll always remember Bill said, because I always wanted to ask him, what would it take to be a leader? He said, leader's not about your title. Leaders titles are given by other people. He said, your people make you a leader. They have to trust you. They have to respect you. They have to know that you care about them. And Bill cared so much about so many people. One of the most incredible things is I thought Bill was one of my best friends. But the almost unimaginable thing is there's 1,000 people that thought Bill was their best friend. Because that was Bill. Bill is just that way. And so, we're going to miss Bill greatly. I already miss him. But the impact that Bill Campbell is having will be forever. So thank you for letting me share that. So when we started this in partnership with Arizona State in 2010, it was all about how could we accelerate innovation education to have an impact. As my friend Dan Rosenzweig, the CEO of Chegg, liked to say, that first year, we had the summit in the cafeteria and half the people there worked at the cafeteria. That's not quite true, but we've grown a long way. We had 35 companies the first year. This year we have over 3,500 attendees. Thank you very much. We have 350 world-class education and talent companies at the summit, and for the 5th year, we're sold out. One of the reasons why this summit has had such an impact is all the alcohol that's served. No, that's not true. It's really this mix, this cocktail mix that we put together of people from a variety of industries and experience that generally would never be in the same room together, but they share the passion for accelerating innovation and education. So we have business leaders, we have entrepreneurs, we have educators. I guess Lou Holtz is the best educator of all time. We have thought leaders, investors. We have celebrities and philanthropists, all coming here for the same purpose. And it's been amazing. People come here because things happen here. Connections are made, capital is raised, ideas are brought to life. In fact, people come here to make things happen. April 2010, in some ways, it seems like yesterday. You look at things like President Obama had already been president 2 years. Lehman Brothers closed before that. That seems, again, like yesterday. At the same time, it's almost impossible to imagine a world without ubiquitous technology, iPhones, iPads. The first iPad was released April 2010, the same month as the summit. You know, Uber was still 2 months away from its first ride in April of 2010. Snapchat started in the summer of 2011, a year after. Today, Snapchat has 8 billion videos watched every single day. Series A for Airbnb was still 7 months away in April 2010. In 2015, they had 80 million nights booked. They raised $1.6 billion in their Series E at a $25 billion valuation. Just incredible, the change. In 2010, there was $550 million raised in the education technology industry from venture capitalists, and we thought that was pretty great. Well, that's quadrupled in the last 5 years to $2.1 billion. And the reason why a lot of this activity is happening is because the first time ever really in this industry, you're seeing these rapidly scaling businesses that I call weapons of mass instruction. And so these weapons of mass instruction are leading to this incredible growth and opportunity as well as interest in the space. An example of a company of weapons of mass instruction is Newton, founded in 2008 by Jose Ferreira, which is a personalized education platform. Today, 10 million students on that platform, 16 billion personalized recommendations. At the first summit, Arizona State and Newton got to know each other and create a partnership to focus on remediating freshman math. Again, the success has been incredible. Pass rates increased 17%. Dropouts decreased 56%. And Arizona State has been this massive adopter of technology to rapidly accelerate learning outcomes. So in 2010, they had 5 technology vendors. Today, they have 130 technology partners, many of which they've met through the summit. In 2010, 2U was just 2 years old, had 1 partner, USC. Today, 15 partners, $1 billion of tuition generated. One company went public 2 years ago with a $1 billion valuation. Class Dojo was founded in 2011. Today, 50 million students, parents, and teachers on the platform. Remind, founded the same year, 35 million users, 3/4 of all US schools. Clever, founded in 2012, 20 million users on its platform. In 2011, Stanford professor Sebastian Thrun, who also doubles as an evil James Bond villain, introduced the first MOOC to the world, had 160,000 students in that first class. Today, Udacity has 4 million students, 168 countries. Coursera, founded in 2012, also out of Stanford by Andrew Ng and Daphne Koller, 18 million students on its network today. And so the skeptics that predicted the demise of the MOOCs, you're seeing continued rapid growth, reaching 35 million students in 2015. So the one thing that we know is constant is change. And that change over a period of time can have pretty dramatic results. So when this country was founded around 1800, the United States was basically the East Coast without Florida. To go from the East Coast to the West Coast would take a generation, and you'd lose half your travel party. Today, if you go from New York to California, it takes 6 hours, and if your Wi-Fi doesn't work, you're pissed off. Tim Draper, the venture capitalist and founder of Draper University, is actually campaigning to have the state of California broken up into 6 states because of the changes that have taken place. In industry, one thing that we see is just how industries are getting basically turned upside down and disrupted overnight. Charles Wilson, the CEO of General Motors in 1953, testified to Congress, as GM goes, so goes the nation. Well, the good news is that wasn't true. Because from the minute he uttered those words, the General Motors value continued to go down until it actually went bankrupt in 2009, as we know. Probably the most important and dramatic catalyst for change ever was Moore's Law, postulated 50 years ago by Gordon Moore, who basically said that computing power would double every 2 years, and in fact, that's what's occurred. What's so interesting about Moore's Law is it wasn't a scientific law or a physical law. It was really a conjecture that he imposed his will on an industry, not only transforming technology, but I'd argue society. And you look at how that change has continued to impact the world and really accelerate. The cost of computing just in the last 15 years, since 2000, has decreased 98% to essentially zero. The cost of storage is free and infinite. Internet access has gone from 371 million people in 2000 to 3.1 billion. Broadband access is up 40-fold to 2.3 billion. PC penetration is up almost 10-fold to 1.4 billion. Mobile penetration is also up about 10-fold to 7 billion. You look at smartphones that didn't even exist in 2000. By the way, there's nobody who's in the millennial even calls it a smartphone. It's just a phone. But anyway, there was no smartphones in 2000. Today, there's 2.6 billion smartphones effectively having a computer in your pocket. App downloads, the App Store didn't start until 2008. 226 billion apps downloaded last year, letting an entrepreneur go from an idea to reaching millions of people at breathtaking speeds. Digital natives in the workforce, in 2000 there were just 9 million of them. Today it's 56 million. It'll be half the workforce in 10 years. The future workforce is a huge theme of this summit. The global middle class has gone from 1.4 billion in 2000 to 2.5 billion. It's expected to reach 5 billion by 2030. College education has more than doubled in developed countries in the past 15 years. So those are all positive changes. The other side of the coin is how things have been negatively impacted over time. So you look in 2000, you had 4 states that had 50% or more of their students were lower income, which is actually pretty remarkable. In a country like as prosperous as the United States of America, there'd actually be 4 states where 50% or more of the students would come from a low-income family. Well, by 2015, it's now 20 states have 50% or more of the students are from lower income. And if you take that to 40%, it's 39 states. What's the consequences of that? Low-income students are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school. They're 8 times more likely to go to prison. If you look at the prison population, 80% of the prison population comes from high school dropouts. SAT scores and SAT tests. So there's a direct correlation between the scores on your SAT and your family income. So what the SAT does the best job of predicting actually is how wealthy your family is. Not coincidental, if you look at the most competitive elite schools, 75% of the students come from the top quartile of family household incomes. If you come from a bottom quartile family income, you have an 8% probability that you're going to even graduate from any college. So what does that mean? So what that essentially means that if you're born poor, you have a 70% probability that you're going to stay poor. So this American dream of reaching the middle class has become fiction. So blue-collar workers, which were the heart and soul historically of the middle class, are being attacked every which way by technology and automation. You look at companies like Amazon, which quote-unquote employ 30,000 robots in their warehouse. There's 350 million global manufacturing warehouse workers, which are all up for play. It's not just impacting blue-collar workers. You've got white-collar workers under siege as well. McKinsey estimates that 12 million US middle-skilled jobs will be eliminated by 2025, and it's also higher-end jobs. So $7 trillion is expected to be managed by robots, and you saw 2 of the robots out there in the hall earlier, by 2025. The Associated Press already has robots do financial analysis on over 3,000 companies every single quarter. So effectively, the money is going to be managed by robots, and the companies are going to be analyzed by robots in terms of what stocks you should be buying. That's the future that we're in. So add this up, and what that means is that 50% of the current jobs are at risk of being replaced in the next 20 years if you just want to get frightened about something. So what people say is, well, gosh, this means everybody's got to get into technology, because that's where, if you read anything on the internet or anything else, you see all the job growth, and the future is all technology and all coding. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Mark Zuckerberg has said he will hire anybody who's a computer engineer, but there's just a huge shortage of that type of skill in the workforce today. And the data supports this. 1.2 million of computer science jobs are opening by 2020. And no less expert than the Harvard Business Review says that data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. And it's sexy because corporations have an insatiable demand to find data scientists because they can't find them and pay them obscene amounts of money. And that's sort of the world that we exist in today. But the problem with that logic is that if you look at the computer capability curve is growing exponentially, where the human capability curve is basically linear. And so we're here. What does this mean? That if you carry this forward, basically, technology is going to replace the technologist. And in fact, you have careers that today are highly desirable, such as digital marketing, visual design, iOS and Android development, data analytics, cybersecurity, and I could go on, that experts predict over the next 10 to 15 years are at risk of being eliminated through technology. So it's not just blue-collar workers and white-collar workers. It's also going to impact no-collar workers. So effectively, the killer jobs today are at risk of being killed tomorrow. So it's not this phenomena of basically looking at the future by projecting the past and current, that's human nature. So just an example of this, same year that Moore's Law came out, here's the graduate, the recent graduate, Dustin Hoffman.
Ben, excuse me. Mr. McGuire. Ben. Mr. McGuire.
Come with me for a minute. I want to talk to you. Excuse us, Joanne.
Of course.
Please. Thank you.
Oh, he is
It's just incredible. I look at him and I can't believe it.
I know.
Simply can't believe it.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Plastics.
Exactly how do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics. Think about it. Will you think about it?
Yes, I will.
Enough said. That's a deal.
So it's a good thing that young Bill Gates wasn't able to see the graduate and go into plastics instead of PCs. So the technology revolution that he was a pioneer and a leader of, it wouldn't have looked the same, and the amazing innovation that's taken place might not have happened. And we've already seen, by the way, on the other side of the coin, some of the challenges that some of this innovation technology is having. And so people like Nobel laureate Paul Krugman have written, we could be looking at a society in which all the gains of wealth accrue to whoever owns the robots. Sam Altman of Y Combinator has made the comment basically saying that all these jobs are going to be eliminated through technology. Basically what's going to have to happen is the government's going to have to give everybody an allowance. Now, that's an interesting concept, but what I don't think is maybe well understood is the government takes money, it doesn't make money. And if all the people that are making money don't make money anymore, well, there's no money to take. But anyway, that's my political comment for tonight. But this concept is not of thinking about technology taking away jobs. This is not a new idea. John Maynard Keynes in 1930 wrote about this new disease called technological unemployment. And the concept of thinking about the future is going to be what the current or what the past is also not recent. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, the smart guy of his day, basically said to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, everybody should focus on farming. Agriculture was the future. Now, that thought didn't have as much impact as the Declaration of Independence, because obviously farming went from 95% of society to 2%. But nonetheless, I mean, that's just the way human nature works, and that's how people think about, how they try to think about the future. The one thing I know, as sure as the sun rises in the east, is automation is going to continue to eat jobs, and that's just the way it's going to be. But that also comes with an improvement in the standard of living, the quality of life. So if you look at what's happened since Moore's Law was proclaimed 50 years ago, you've had a 2 times increase in GDP per capita. You've had a 2 times increase in corporate profits. You've had a 2.5 times increase in labor productivity. But what's also happened is median income has stalled over the last 50 years. And if you actually look for males, it's decreased. So what's happened essentially is the gains, the benefits are accruing to fewer and fewer people. This whole 1% concept is actually a very real issue. And so what you're seeing is happening is few individuals and leading businesses are getting a disproportionate amount of the benefit effective. We're entering a winner-take-all economy. We've seen this in technology for years, where in technology in general, the internet specifically, is all about disproportionate gain to a leader in a category. Now we're seeing that everywhere. So in technology, I mean, Facebook is 160 times larger than its nearest competitor. Google is 3 times larger than Bing. YouTube is 8 times larger than Vimeo. Amazon is 1,000 times larger than Jet. CEO compensation, is now incredible. And today, the average CEO makes 303 times what their average worker makes. Look at Major League Baseball players. The average Major League Baseball player makes $4.3 million. 50 years ago, the average Major League Baseball player made about the same amount as the average worker. Things have changed. So Aristotle said, inequality is the parent of revolution. And if you look what's going on in society, people are angry. People are mad. Look at this election. You got people angry. And people are looking for choices. They're looking for something radically different. And why? It makes sense, because they're scared. I mean, they're looking out and they're seeing a future that they don't know that they're going to participate in, because they don't have the knowledge and skills and experience that they need to be relevant in this dynamic world we're in. So we've adopted a great motto that our Lifetime Achievement recipients on Wednesday evening, Mitch and Frida Kapoor, have coined, saying, talent is equally distributed by zip code, but opportunity is not. So borrowing from a fundamental of our speaker tomorrow morning, Jim Collins, who talks about BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, we've adopted our BHAG for this event, for this community, to accelerate innovation and education to solve this problem, to ensure that every person has an equal opportunity to participate in the future. And so to do this, last fall we put out a white paper called 2020 Vision, which we outlined the steps that we feel could be taken to solve that goal, to accomplish that goal that we talked about, everybody having an equal opportunity to participate in the future. By the way, if you want this white paper, you can go to gsv.com and download it, or you can order it. But that's what we said. But we did this through a Silicon Valley lens, because the magic of Silicon Valley is not about bits and bytes and chips. It's a mindset. It's a mindset of exponential ideas focused on key issues, key problems. When you look at the automobile industry, the fact of the matter is the reason why there's been so little innovation in the car industry out of Detroit isn't because they're not spending a lot of money on R&D. General Motors spent $7.2 billion on research and development last year. What did that get us? The Cadillac electronic car, which you're able to drive 35 miles before you have to charge it. BMW, the ultimate driving machine, created an electric car, 81 miles before you had to recharge that. Elon Musk, unencumbered by industry knowledge, basically did to the automobile industry what Steve Jobs did to the mobile phone business, is he basically transformed it with the Tesla Model S. That was the highest rated car of all time, able to go 265 miles on a charge, effectively putting a computer on wheels. And now, you have General Motors, which is basically on a linear innovation curve. You have Tesla that's been on this exponential curve. And that's what we're talking about, applying a Silicon Valley lens to this opportunity. Now, coming to the world next is the self-driving car, which you can see in Silicon Valley today. You'll see at an intersection near you by 2020. But that's continued to apply imagination to these new issues. So imagination really is the common ingredient that is needed to come up with these radical, transformative ideas to solve big problems. So looking at what Facebook did, they just reimagined what communication was going to look like in this new internet-connected world. 1.6 billion members later and 300 billion market value, it's an amazing story. Airbnb thought about what particular millennials wanted to do when they traveled, where they wanted to stay, where they didn't want to own anything, has become twice as valuable as Marriott, despite Marriott being 100 years old. Selexel, reimagining how you're going to get power and electricity, effectively tapped into the power of the sun, which has limitless, power, because the idea is basically when the sun runs out of power, we're going to have bigger issues to worry about anyway. 23andMe developed this program where you can get your own personal human genome done, your own personal genome done for $200. It cost $100 million 10 years ago. So if you look at education innovation, we've been on this linear innovation curve for a long time. And what we believe is that when you look at Uber did about reimagining transportation, taking it from point A to point B, and getting rid of this ridiculous concept of putting your hand up in the air to hail a cab, they reimagined this whole business and again transformed an industry. We need to think about how we change education so everybody can participate and learn to participate in the future, and what are those exponential ideas that are going to make that happen, and we talked about some of them. So as we think about the gap that exists between linear innovation and exponential innovation, that's what we think is this opportunity gap. So we believe the focus of how we're going to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in the future is to mine the gap. It's basically thinking about how do we close that gap, mine that gap through innovation. If we're able to, I had more slides, but I want to make this a tighter speech. But just consider, if we were able to give every US student, get them up to basic PISA standards, that would have a $27 trillion impact in our economy. If you were to apply that same formula on a global basis, it would have a $200 trillion impact. To put a perspective on that, that's more than double the global GDP. So we focus on 4 themes that we think can mine the gap, can transform education, can accomplish this goal of ensuring everybody has equal opportunity to participate in the future. And the first of these themes is we call Hollywood meets Harvard. Because we think there's things the education industry can learn from the entertainment and media business that can be applied to really mine the gap and create scale solution. Engagement for one, how you leverage consistent quality, thinking about how you create greater access. A story I want to share, just to give you an example or an analogy, is in 1967, the first Super Bowl was held in Los Angeles Coliseum between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. In that game, 60,000 people attended that first Super Bowl. They paid $12 for a ticket. The average NFL team was worth $6 million, and the average NFL player made $25,000. So Super Bowl 50 was just played in San Francisco between the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers. I'd say go Denver, but I can't say it. Anyway, there was 80,000 attendees at that game. Ticket price was $1,500 per ticket. 167 million additional people were able to watch the game on television free on TV. That was subsidized by advertisers paying $5 million per 30-second commercial, which produced $360 million in ad sales. Really interesting in terms of just evolving a model. And so the average NFL team today is worth $2 billion, up from $6 million 50 years ago, and the average NFL player makes $2.2 million. So effectively what the NFL did was took a physical sporting event and they transformed it into a media model. Okay? Increased access, increased quality, increased the value for every constituent in the value chain. Better for the fan, better for the player, better for the owner. If you look at the Ivy League and equivalent, in 1967 there were 60,000 students. Today there's about 80,000 students, which, by the way, is the same growth where the Super Bowl had 60,000 to 80,000. That's where the similarities end. So the cost to graduate at Ivy League school in 1967 was $15,000. Today it's $250,000. There's 138 million US adults that don't have a college degree. So if we were going to give every single one of them an Ivy League education, it would cost $35 trillion, which would be about 2 times the US economy. So if you look at sort of the change in evolution, Super Bowl, Ivy League, started the same place, Super Bowl, dramatically different. So what we think is one of the ways we're going to mind the gap and transform education, ensure everybody has equal opportunity to participate in the future, is putting education in the middle of media. Another Hollywood meets Harvard example is what's going on with virtual reality. Virtual reality has been something that technologists have been excited about for some time, but really was far from being practical or commercial. Now we're seeing that change, effectively having SeaWorld come to your local gym, and virtual reality industry is growing from $90 million in 2014 to $5.2 billion. There's going to be tremendous opportunity in education and the virtual reality world. Big data is a second important theme that we're focused on as a way to mind the gap. Effectively powerful analytic software applied to this industry to let you know what somebody knows, what they need to know, and what they should know. So big data is being used throughout industry. Netflix is an example. 50% of the programs watched today come from a recommendation that they give their subscriber, coming from what the subscriber has already watched before and what people of like interest have watched and liked. It's not just for fun. It's also life and death situations. Physicians only have a 50% accuracy in diagnosing lung cancer. Jeopardy champion IBM's Watson has 90% accuracy in predicting lung cancer. So we think the future of big data and education could look something like this, where you have adaptive technology that allows you to have a personalized, individualized experience like you see with a Netflix or Spotify or an Amazon, with the diagnostic software of an IBM Watson or 23andMe. And what that leads to is your own personal robot tutor. So being able to have this kind of what I call a robo-ed we wrote about. So to give you a window, a little snippet to your personal robot future, I'm just going to play a little clip from Big Hero 6.
I was alerted to the need for medical attention when you said, I'm
a robotic nurse.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain? Physical
Or emotional.
I will scan you now. Scan complete. You have a slight epidermal abrasion on your forearm. I suggest an antibacterial spray.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's in the spray specifically?
The primary ingredient is bacitracin.
It's a bummer. I'm actually allergic to that.
You are not allergic to bacitracin. You do have a mild allergy to peanuts.
Not bad. You've done some serious coding on this thing, huh?
Programming will over 10,000 medical procedures. This chip is what makes Baymax Baymax.
So Malcolm Gladwell, famously in Outliers, talks about to master something, you need to spend 10,000 hours practicing it. Effectively, practice makes perfect. So the point is, you don't have something magically happen overnight. You have to work at it. Big data is going to allow you to measure that and be able to give prescription how to do it most efficiently, effectively. But if you look at this, what's going on in today's craze is, of course, 10,000 steps, where whether it's your iWatch or your Fitbit, allows you to track, so you do 10,000 steps, but you don't get physically fit overnight. You do it over a period of time, and that's what happens. Your financial health, you're able to track through your Mint app, so you get real time in what's going on financially, but over time is when real accomplishments can happen. We believe the future is going to be about having your own fitness, your own educational fitness app, where you're going to be learning something every day, being able to measure it, being able to put it in your portfolio, because it's going to be how you're going to accomplish big things over time. Interestingly, 10,000 hours is the amount of time a K-12 student spends in the classroom before they graduate from high school. And we look at also, very interesting, is that same student spends 10,000 hours playing video games. So if we think about how we're going to have the greatest efficacy and the greatest scale impact in education, it's where you can combine the engagement of a great video game with the efficacy of great curriculum. That's where the mega winners are going to be found. A third theme of the four themes, so just to take from Guy Kawasaki's talk, always let people know that you're finishing soon. Kaizen EDU is an important theme of the environment and the world that we're in, which is basically continuous learning or lifelong learning. You're no longer going to fill up your knowledge tank to age 25 and drive off through life. You're going to continually need to replenish it. And so some of the dynamics of the future of learning, looking at things like the baby born today 33% of them are going to live to be 100 years old or greater. Everybody growing up in the future is about digital natives. We expect things to be delivered technologically. I saw in Dan Rosenzweig's Chegg presentation today where 50% of the students actually prefer receiving their learning online as opposed to in person. That's a new reality. Look at the millennials coming out of college today. They care about impact more than income. 64% would say they would work for less than half of their current income if they were in a job that they thought had meaning. In the same study, it showed where 40% of millennials would take 20% less money if they were able to fire their boss. But I just thought that was interesting. So looking at the millennial coming out of college, they're going to have 15 careers between the time they graduate from college and the time they retire, if they ever retire. And the paradox is that one of the thing that millennials value most from an employer is that they get training and development from them. So they're going to be leaving their employer frequently, but they expect them to spend the money to train them. So that creates an interesting challenge, but that's a new reality. So this old system is you played from 0 to 5, you learned from 5 to 25, you had a job from 25 to 65, and then you retired at 65. The new system is basically going to learn your whole life, from womb to tomb. And that's the way that we think the future of learning is going to look like. And so the skills for this new learning environment are going to be different. Obviously, reading, writing, and arithmetic are important. STEM is obviously critically important, but it's new skills. Things like learn to learn. I mean, that's the foundation. It's a world of lifelong learning. Learning to learn is going to be a key fundamental. Entrepreneurship, communication, empathy, critical thinking, grit, adaptability, and change the world. These are all fundamental skills that need to be acquired. And the last theme is knowledge as a currency, and this really takes a bunch of things I've already talked about, but how we're going to represent what you know for future opportunity. So we believe in terms of the importance of learning going forward is it's going to be about knowledge, not college. It's about what you know, not where you go, because you're going to be accumulating knowledge and skills from a variety of different sources. It's not just dropping out of life and going back to school. You're going to have to do it in a variety of different ways. And so one of those frameworks that we look at is what we call this news to knowledge continuum, because when you look at the way that you're going to get educated, it's going to be everything from information, think Google, everything from on the other end, a university, think Harvard, and everything in between. That is the knowledge continuum that we believe is being created today. Then how do you capture and represent that knowledge to have any value to it? So if you look what's happened to countries, because of e-commerce and globalization, paper currency has become challenged. And that's where digital currency and Bitcoin have come up to address that challenge. In the world that we're in, this old currency of the diploma, it's not going to be replaced, but it's going to be augmented by other ways to represent things that you know, classes that you've taken, things that you've been able to learn, and now be able to represent to the world that you know it. And it's going to be increasingly represented on digital networks such as LinkedIn. We say all roads lead to LinkedIn because it's where you represent what your experience is, what you know. It also is where you're going to increasingly obtain new knowledge and also get new opportunities. And so this old world where you found a university, the U.S. News and World was sort of the way that rated different programs. And by the way, one of those was, you got rated higher if you rejected more people. That makes a lot of sense. The new one is going to be more like Zagat's, where you effectively, the network is telling you what works. And so it's showing, what are the most effective programs. So my CFO, Bill Tanona, would be delighted to know that Villanova is the top-ranked accounting program by accounting professionals, because he went to Villanova and he's also still celebrating their win. But again, it's rethinking, it's reimagining the world that we're in and what needs to be done to address that. So thinking, bucking kind of conventional wisdom, thinking differently, imagining new opportunities is really what has to happen to mind the gap and to solve the problems that we're talking about. Scientists historically thought the 4-minute mile was impossible. They wrote that, in fact, if you ran faster than 4 minutes, your heart would burst. So in 1954, when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile and collapsed at the finish line, people thought he was dead. What was interesting is 2 months after he broke the record, he broke it again, as did another runner in the race. And after that, it became routine to break the 4-minute mile. I mean, high school students break the 4-minute mile, older people break the 4-minute mile. The distance didn't change, but the mindset did. The great philosopher Muhammad Ali said, impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. If you look at the speakers that we have at this summit the next few days, it's people that looked at things that people said were impossible or couldn't be done, and they defied all skeptics and accomplished it. Paul Jacobs and his dad, Paul will be speaking next, at Qualcomm imagined a wireless connected world despite what all the skeptics thought. Condoleezza Rice grew up in the segregated South, against all odds became the provost at Stanford University and the Secretary of State. Jim Collins, who had to repeat the 4th grade, went on to be one of the great business strategists of all time. Saul Kahn taught his niece how to do math over the internet, left his hedge fund job because he imagined a world where he could reach millions of students to teach them subjects. General McChrystal, speaking Wednesday night, found out that the enemy he was facing didn't read the military textbook that told you how you were supposed to fight a war. He had to reimagine how to engage with an enemy and teach his teams a different way to win. And Bill Gates imagined a world that would be healthier, where they could prevent people from having early deaths just by taking vaccine. And despite people saying this is impossible, 7 million lives have been saved. That's going to be more than double that by 2020. So what I'd like to do in closing, for the rest of the summit, and then when we leave the summit, I'd like to imagine what it would look like to mind the gap. I'd like you to imagine what would happen if everybody had an equal opportunity to participate in the future. I'd like you to imagine how we could use exponential ideas applied to this challenge. I'd like you to imagine what great looks like. I'd like you to dare to be great. Thank you very much.